the fancies of the internet. Yeah. Go ahead, read.
Our subliminal self is not like our surface physical being, an outcome of the energy of the inconscient. It is a meeting place of the consciousness that emerges from below by evolution and the consciousness that has descended from above for involution. There is in it an inner mind, an inner vital being of ourselves, an inner or subtle physical being larger than our outer being and nature. This inner existence is the concealed origin of almost all in our surface self that is not a construction of the first inconscient world energy or a natural developed functioning of our surface consciousness or a reaction of it to impact from the outside universal nature. And even in this construction, these functions, these reactions, the subliminal takes part and exercises on them a considerable influence. There is here a consciousness which has a power of direct contact with the universal, unlike the most indirect contacts which our surface being maintains with the universe through the sense mind and the senses. There are here inner senses, a subliminal sight, touch, hearing, but these subtle senses are rather channels of the inner being's direct consciousness of things than its informants. The subliminal is not dependent on its senses for its knowledge. They only give a form to its direct experience of objects. They do not, so much as in waking mind, convey forms of objects for the mind's documentation or as the starting point or basis for an indirect constructive experience. The subliminal has the right of entry into the mental and vital and subtle physical planes of the universal consciousness. It is not confined to the material plane and the physical world. It possesses means of communication with the worlds of being, which the descent towards involution created in its passage, and with all corresponding planes or worlds that may have arisen or been constructed to serve the purpose of the reascent from the inconscient to superconscious. It is into this large realm of inner existence that our mind and vital being retire when they withdraw from the surface activities, whether by sleep or inward drawn concentration or by the inner plunge of trance.
Yeah. Okay. So he's explaining the nature of the intraconscient. Okay. So let's have a look at what he's saying. So first of all, to get the total picture, there is an involution and there is an evolution. In the evolution, it is in time. Okay. From matter comes out life at some point in time in evolution, and from life comes out mind at some point in time. We don't know, but if someone can go into the historical dates, okay, then you will see that life has come out at some point. But it's very difficult to say that because it comes out in such small quantities. It's very difficult to say at what point it starts, because take even life, no? It becomes with small animalcules. What's they use the word animalcule. So you don't know at what time it has come. In fact, sometimes there is matter and life also, like in the virus. Okay, sometimes it behaves like matter, sometimes it behaves like a living creature. So it's very difficult to say when life came into the picture, into the evolution, into the world, and when mind came also, because mind also exactly in the same way. Some animals have a minimum of mind, they use even logic. Finally, you have animals which are almost like they have logic, and finally, you have man. So it's very difficult to say at what point in time they came up. But there is the involution which is outside time. Now note that, that's a very interesting thing, because whatever is coming out in time is constructed. It can be destroyed. Okay? What can be constructed can be destroyed. But what is coming in the involution is not in time, and therefore it cannot be destroyed. So the supermind first creates the overmind. It is something permanent and cannot be destroyed. Then from the overmind, you come down to the intuitive mind, and that also is a plane of consciousness which is ever present. It cannot be destroyed. It's not constructed. It is eternal. Then from the overmind, you come down to intuitive mind, then you come down to illumined mind, and finally you come down to higher mind. All these planes are the eternally present, and they are typal beings. They don't depend on evolution, they depend on involution, and they are all there, and they can be experienced in their purity, and their uh, almost substantially you can experience them. Then when you come down below into mind, our life and our body, this is the constructed part, but the construction is from evolution. So there is a mind plane which is also eternal, there is also a life plane which is eternal, and there is matter also which is eternal, and these planes also cannot be destroyed. They are in the involution, whatever is there, they are permanent, eternal. Matter is eternal. But now out of matter and unconscious comes out life, and life is destructible. Then there is mind also which is destructible. They are constructed things. So note very carefully that involution and evolution are like two parallel lines. The involution is coming down and producing these 7 planes of consciousness which are eternal and ever present. Then in evolution from matter, life comes out. It is something constructed. It is something constructed. The involutionary planes are not constructed. They are eternal. Okay? Not same the called typal beings. So in the construction, life is there. That's why all life forms are destroyable. I'm using funny words, but they can be destroyed. That is the reason why everything in the physical world, all living creatures die. But they are supported by the life plane which is immortal. Therefore, there is a constant. Life itself is immortal, but life forms are mortal. Then you come to mind, same thing. Again, mind, what is constructed can be destroyed. In fact, that's what you see. When you go to the self, a man, when he makes his mind silent, he has destroyed the mind. Okay? He has actually killed it. There is no more mind. It is gone. It is merged into the infinite mind plane of consciousness. So remember this. Then we will read what he is saying now. Okay? So the involutionary planes are eternal, permanent. The evolutionary planes of matter, life and mind are constructed. And even when the supermind comes down into the physical world, it will be a constructed world. There is a difference between that which is above and that which is below. That which is above and produces the involution is eternal and permanent. That which is coming from below is impermanent and they can be constructed. This is the difference. Now we go back to this is an important point you have to remember. Then we'll start reading what he's saying. So which
Excuse
is the
me.
Yes, tell me.
You know, the asuras and all, if they are typal beings, that means they cannot be destroyed. But Durga kills the asuras.
Yeah, but that's why we have heard of Rakta Bija. He is an asura who cannot be destroyed. They are always there. Maybe individuals will be destroyed, but the plane itself, they cannot be destroyed. Rakta Bija is something very interesting. When you kill an asura, okay, he was an asura which you kill, and even one drop of blood falls from him, he again recreates himself. This is the truth. Falsehood will never disappear from the physical world, but you can change it. But falsehood as such, that will remain. So asuras are destroyable, but they are eternally being born again. The plane, we spoke of the planes of consciousness, no? So they are permanent. Okay, so
Okay.
yeah. Now we go to the, so what is the subliminal? There is this superconscious which is above the mind. There is this subconscious which is below our mind level. It is in matter. There is the subconscious. In our body also there is subconscious. And there is the inconscient which is the foundation from which everything springs up. Then when you go, so one is above and one is below. Then there is something inside you. Okay? That inside is the intraconscious. And the outside is also what is called, Srimdu calls the circumconscious. That means to say your aura around you. It is in touch with the external world. The aura around you puts you in touch with the external world. And that aura can be enlarged. As in Srimdu's case, we know very well, it enlarged into 2 miles. Okay, when mother was coming from Sri Lanka, she knew that she is entering Srimdu's aura. Okay, and that was the his aura. So she and he is conscious in that area which is there extended. He is conscious in that. That's called the consciousness. So then there is the intraconscious above you, and there is the circumconscious. So up, down, inside, outside. Everything is possible for you. You can enlarge yourself into the above. You can enlarge yourself not so easily into the subconscious. You can enlarge yourself into the intraconscious, and you can also expand your the aura, which is usually about 1 centimeter, 1.5 centimeters, but it can be expanded much more and become even cosmic. So with this background, we'll start reading now. So what is the subliminal? It's the intraconscious, that is inside. But is it absolutely inside, or is there something in between the outer nature, which is the body, mind, life, and that? Yes, there is a plane of consciousness, Srimdu calls it the inner mind, inner vital, and the inner physical. So you have to cross these and then go deep into the subliminal, and even deeper into subliminal is a psychic being. So this is the geographical location of all these planes. Okay. So once we have this picture, we start reading what he's saying. Our subliminal self is not, like our surface physical being, an outcome of the energy of the inconscient. So this is exactly what we have been discussing. The surface physical being is our body. It's a body which is the outcome of the energy of the inconscient. The energy of the inconscient is the Prakriti, nature. And nature is building our body out of the substance which is there in the material world. Okay? Exactly in the same way, our vital also is an outcome of the energy of the prana plane of consciousness. So it is a constructed thing. So body, mind, life are constructed things. They are outcomes of energy of the inconscient. But the subliminal is not that. The subliminal is something permanent. That's what we discussed just now, right? It's a meeting place of the consciousness that emerges from below by evolution, and a consciousness that has descended from above for involution. So it's a meeting place. It's when you are evolving, when you are doing yoga, you can go into with your consciousness which has come out of the inconscient, you can enter into the subliminal. You can enter. So there is a right of entry into the subliminal. So that's a meeting place between the downward. In fact, Srimdu describes it as a double ladder. The involution is a ladder which is coming down, and they are permanent planes of consciousness. And there is an evolution which is the ladder of evolution, matter, life, mind, and then other planes which are yet to be built, but they have not yet been built. Okay, so this is what he's saying. Very clear what he's saying. Outcome of the energy of the inconscient are those things which are constructed. Okay, it's a meeting place of the consciousness that emerges from below by evolution, and the consciousness that has descended from above for involution. There is in it an inner mind, an inner vital being, of ourselves, an inner or subtle physical being larger than our outer being and nature, our outer being and its characteristics. This inner existence is a concealed origin of almost all in our surface self, that is not a construction of the first inconscient world energy or a natural developed functioning of our surface consciousness or a reaction of it to impacts on the outside universal nature. And even in this construction, these functionings, these reactions, this subliminal takes part and exercises on them a considerable influence. It's a huge sentence and we have to go very carefully into each one. He is giving a very detailed description. Now, this inner existence, which one? The inner mind, the inner vital, and the inner physical. This inner existence is a concealed origin of almost all in our surface self, body, mind, life. That is not a construction of the first inconscient world energy or a natural developed functioning of our surface consciousness. Okay. So let's look at this. That is what is it. Every life that you have experienced on earth, there is something that you are taking from the physical world and permanently putting it into your inner being. Permanently. If you are a soldier, you are putting the development of your courage, okay, and the sense of adventure into your inner being, and that remains with you permanently now. Okay. Then next life you may be a inventor. Then the capacity to invent, okay, that capacity is absorbed into the inner being and it can express itself in the next life, but this is permanently there, built in your inner being. So as these permanent features go on in adding, you grow in consciousness. So this is what Sri is saying, okay, and they are not constructed, they are permanent, okay. Your courage that you get in life, in one life, becomes permanent in your inner being. The sensitiveness of the sense of beauty, aesthetic sense, also becomes permanent in your inner being. It doesn't change. It is there stored. Okay? And that tries to express itself in the next life, not very successfully, but sometimes it can express itself successfully. I'll give you one example how in Sri Aurobindo life he says that when he was in the jail, okay, suddenly his capacity to understand painting and sculpture and arts suddenly opened out in him. How did it suddenly open out? Because he has absorbed that in his past life. If you remember, he was Leonardo da Vinci and he was an artist of the first grade. He was also an inventor. But the sense of beauty and the sense of composition and aesthetic sense developed at that time, it was there in his being. But in this life, he was into literature and the capacity of aesthetic development was there hidden inside. But when he was in jail, suddenly he found that it is coming to the surface. Okay, that's what he's saying here. Very clearly, you see it's not a construction. It is something permanent in him. Okay, so these are.
Excuse me.
Yes, tell me.
That means when a person dies, I thought it was only the psychic being which continued its journey onwards to progress.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
even the inner being also is a separate entity, or is it the
Yes.
psychic which stores the inner being's memory, or does the inner being dissolve?
Yeah. No, the inner being doesn't dissolve. That's what I'm saying. Nah? So that is permanent. You carry on what you have gained in the next life. There is a sense of continuity. Okay. So, and we have given a geographical description now, but you must remember also that in the actual field, this geographical description is not really corresponding to that. So the inner, your psychic being is in the subliminal. So it's got an aura around it, which is the subliminal. That is permanent. You can say in a I think you can say, logically, you can say that the psychic being is a repository of everything, but it also expresses itself. It tries to give what it has got to the outer being, the body, mind, life. So you can say that the subliminal is the nature of the psychic being. You could say that. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. We have to be a little plastic in our understanding of things. While you were asking the question, it also struck me. The inner being does not get destroyed. It gets carried over from life to life. And that is why you can grow. If every time you had something, okay, and you lose it, then again, like snakes and ladders, you go right up to the 99th one, and before you enter 100, you come down to zero. So it's not like that. What you gain is retained in the inner being. Exactly. Okay? So, so we go back to what he is saying. So this inner existence is a concealed origin. Now you'll understand what he's saying. Is a concealed origin of almost all in our surface self. Whatever we are in our surface self, that is permanently there, and it is sending its courage, it's sending its aesthetic sense, it is sending all that you have experienced in past lives. It is trying to express itself in the body, mind, life. Not very successfully, but the more developed you are, yes, it can come out. Just like in Sri Aurobindo case, the idea of the aesthetic element suddenly came out. Okay. That can happen. And this happened also with Raman Maharshi. Raman Maharshi was not educated na? At the age of 16. He left. He was in the American college in Madurai, and he left at that time, 16-year-old boy, he left. So his education is not complete. But when he reached the self, and later on he was correcting and guiding people in poetry in Tamil, Telugu, Sanskrit, English. So when someone asked him that you have not been educated, how do you do this? Then he said exactly the same thing that we are discussing now. He said when you go to the self, he didn't use these words, but I am using the words. The intraconscient, whatever is there, comes out, and they express themselves very easily in this way. Okay, so this is what subliminal is something fantastic. Okay? It's very, very interesting. And you can compare the subliminal to the internet, the physical internet. Na? All the information that you want is available on the internet. All you have to do is to Google. But there is one difference. In the intraconscient, everything that has happened in the world, all over the world, everywhere, through the beginning of history to the end of the present history, everything is recorded and everything is available. In the internet, everything is not available, and also there is a chance of mistakes also. In fact, when you go to certain blogs, you will see that there are spelling mistakes and there are idea mistakes, and sometimes the author at the bottom, he says, please correct any errors that are there. Okay, so the internet, the intraconscient also is open to error, but not much. Okay, the physical mind, body, mind, life, our mind can make a lot of mistakes, but the intraconscient is 10 times more knowledgeable, but the possibility of error is there in the intraconscient. But there is no error in the higher planes of consciousness. In the superconscient planes, there is no error, but there is a diminution of truth. It's interesting if you think about it. There is a diminution of truth, but not error. That's what Sri Aurobindo says. Okay? So, now I continue with the next, what he's saying. This inner existence is the concealed origin of almost all, look at that, 90% in our surface self, that is not a construction of the first inconscient world energy. All the capacities that you have developed in your past life are not constructions of the inconscient world energy. They are, they are there permanently in you, or a natural developed functioning of our surface consciousness. So understand this. When in one life, your natural developed functioning of the surface consciousness. I take up engineering in this life and I get the skills of engineering. I know how to deal with that. that goes into the intraconscious and becomes permanent. But the engineering skills that I have developed is coming in this life, and it's a natural developed functioning of our surface consciousness. But that goes, its essence is retained in the intraconscious. Okay? Or a reaction of it to impacts from the outside universal nature. Now that's also interesting. What does he mean by that? So suppose there's a strong reaction and you have an enemy, okay, and you react in a certain way, and you learn to react in the right way, that reaction also becomes part of your intraconscious. That's what he's saying. Or a reaction of it to impacts from the outside universal nature. It can be good, it can be harmful also. But you learn, and what you learn, your reaction to all these things is stored in the intraconscious. Okay? So, those language is a little abstract, but we have to interpret what he's saying. So, clear now what he's saying? I think we've gone into quite detail, so we have seen what he's saying. And then he's saying this inner existence is the conceived origin of almost all our surface self. That is not a construction in the first inconscient world only, or a natural developed functioning of our surface consciousness, or a reaction of it to impacts of the outside world. And even in this construction, these functionings, these reactions, the subliminal takes part and exercises on them a considerable influence. So, yeah, the more developed you are, the more guidance you will get from the subliminal. That's what he's saying. And it teaches you how to deal with the external impacts of the physical world. The external impacts can be a storm, it can be an insult of somebody, or a praise of somebody, or new ideas coming into your mind. It can be at the body level, vital level, and also the mental level. These are the external touches from the physical world. It teaches you things. There is here a consciousness which has a power of direct contact with the universal, unlike the mostly indirect contacts which our surface being maintains with the universal through the sense mind and the senses. So what does he mean by direct and indirect? Indirect, at the physical world, in our physical world, we are in touch with the world outside us. But is there something between you and the outside world? Yes, there are the senses. So it is indirect. The senses are the go-between your understanding of things and what the universe is. So it is indirect. But when you go into your intraconscious, you don't need the senses. You go directly, your consciousness enters into that which is to be known, and you know it. Therefore it is direct. In other words, knowledge by identity. That's what it means. So direct and indirect is clear. So as you go on, in the intraconscious, there can be direct contact, but the direct contact need not be 100%. That 100% of direct contact can be there only in the superconscious, in the supermental. But something direct is possible. You can. He will explain further. We will see what he is saying. So, how do you do that? Because the senses, the physical senses, are the indirect. But there are here in this intraconscious. Here means intraconscious. Inner senses, a subliminal sight, touch, and hearing. They are there because we know that there is a subliminal sight. When I am dreaming, I am not using my eyes. I am also hearing, but I am not using my ears. Huh? So they are inner senses. A subliminal sight, subliminal touch, subliminal hearing. Touch also is possible, remember. Okay. But there are very interesting things. Whether taste and I've never seen. I ask the students very often. In dreams, have you ever tasted something, or have you smelled something? Sometimes they say yes, but I have never come across a very. See, Sremda also is limiting himself here to sight, touch, and hearing, but he's not talking of smell and what? The other one, taste. No? So So it's interesting. This is something which I have not been able to solve as yet. But it seems that it is rare. If you look into your own dreams, try and think of a time when you have had a dream where you are actually tasting the food or smelling the flower and getting the fragrance of the flower. If you can think of that, please tell me. I'll find it very interesting. I myself have never had that. Okay, I have seen strange foods being offered to me. Okay, but I have not tasted them. And even if I taste them, even if I eat them, I am not getting the taste. Okay, so it's a very interesting question. We have to see about that. So I continue. Okay, so, uh, there is here that we read. Okay, there are inner senses, a subliminal sight, touch, hearing. But these subtle senses are rather channels of the inner being's direct consciousness of things than its informants. Very interesting sentence. And see what he's saying. So he's saying these subtle senses are channels. They are the pipelines. They are not the informants. In the physical world, these senses are the informants. It is the eyes are informing you what you are seeing. Okay, it's giving you information. Whereas in the intraconscient, the sight is not an informant, but it is a channel. It is allowing you to put yourself in touch with that which you want to know. No? Very interesting words he is using, and see how we have to understand what he's saying. But these subtle senses are rather channels. The sense is not there. It's a channel allowing you to put yourself in touch with the others. Okay, of the inner being's direct consciousness of things, then its informants. How interesting even the language. Huh? The subliminal is not dependent on its senses for its knowledge. There you are. Okay, the subliminal does not depend on senses. It's a body-mind life that depends on senses, but not the subliminal. They only give a form to its direct experience of objects. They do not, so much as in waking mind, convey forms of objects for the mind's documentation or as a starting point or basis of for an indirect constructive experience. So, they only give a form to the direct experience of objects. They do not, so much as in waking mind, convey forms of objects for the mind's documentation or the starting point or basis of an indirect constructive experience. Let's try and understand what he's saying. So he's saying that the physical senses are giving you information, and he's using a very interesting word, documentation. Okay, he's saying that it becomes like a document. Okay. When you have a document with you, you know what it says. Okay, you examine the document and it says this is the like a legal document, for instance. When you read it, you know what the conditions are. So these senses also are documents. The senses are giving you documents of what you are seeing, what you are hearing, and what you are seeing. Okay. And these are the forms that come to you. So just imagine, use your imagination and understand what he's saying. They convey forms of objects for the mind's documentation. You are recording it. A documentation is a recording. Okay. So it is recording. The eyesight is seeing something and the outside object is sending its vibrations and it falls on the retina, and the retina is passing on this to the mind, and the mind is recording it as a document and saying, oh, I am seeing a lion, I am seeing a tiger, I am seeing a tree. So if the capacity of the mind for documentation is not there, what you are seeing will be only semi-real to you. That's what happens when you make your mind silent. Okay. So the capacity of documentation disappears when your mind is silent. So for an indirect constructive experience. Note also the word constructive. You are constructing an experience. All the senses are giving you experiences by which you construct an image in your mind. Okay, so the subliminal has a right of entry into the mental and vital and subtle physical planes of the universal consciousness. So the intraconscient, okay, can enter, it's got the power to enter the mental, vital and subtle physical planes of the universal consciousness. It is not confined to the material plane and the physical world. It is not there. It possesses means of communication with the worlds of being, which the descent towards involution created in its passage. That's exactly what we discussed. And with all corresponding planes or worlds that may have arisen or being constructed to serve the purpose of the re-ascent from inconscious to superconscious. So the intraconscious is the planes which are the meeting ground of the involutionary and the evolutionary. They are a mixture of both. It is into this large realm of interior existence that our mind and vital being retire when they withdraw from the surface activities, whether by sleep or inward drawn concentration or by the inner plunge of trance. So, you can enter into your intraconscious in three ways. He is telling you. One way he has not told you, but I'll add that. Okay, it can be by sleep. When you are sleeping, your consciousness has shut out the physical world, and you can go into your intraconscious. You also go into your subconscious, and sometimes you go into the superconscious also, but we are not conscious of it. But mostly, you can go into your intraconscious. So, how can you do that? By sleep, or by samadhi, or by hypnotism. Hypnotism I am adding, but it's basically the same phenomena. Your surface consciousness is put to rest. Wait, don't disturb my going inside. Okay, calm down. So it's exactly like when I am concentrating on something and someone comes and asks me a question, I tell him, wait, let me finish what I am reading. Okay, so it's like that. The outside world is constantly interfering with your entry into the intraconscious. Or to put it in another interesting way, is the stars are always there. The stars are there at night and in the day. The intraconscious is always there. But sometimes you see them and you don't see them. At night you see them. Why? Because the daylight has diminished itself. So the daylight is your waking consciousness. So the waking consciousness goes down like the daylight at night, then the stars become available. So you go into your intraconscious. Okay? It's exactly the same way. They are always there. But therefore, and this daylight reducing or your waking consciousness reducing can happen in three ways. It can happen by sleep, but we are not conscious of it. It can happen by samadhi, in which we are very conscious, and in trance, in hypnotism also, we are conscious of what is happening, and you go one step more. You start even speaking about what you are saying. So this is what Sylvia is saying. It's 8:31. So what I'll do one thing, we have got 4 minutes. I'll read out the summary of what he's saying here, okay, to sum up what we have just now learned. Okay. Yeah. 1 second. So what Sylvia is saying here, the subliminal is not the surface being. It is not a development from the inconscient. It is something permanent. That which develops from the inconscient is something constructed. The subliminal is not constructed. It is added to. Okay? Each life adds something to the subliminal, but it is not constructed. Okay? It's not a development from the inconscient. It is a region which is the meeting point between the inconscient upward rising and the superconscient descending downwards, which are the involution and the evolution in the and the involution. Satchidananda creates intermediate worlds which are necessary for the evolution. They are stages needed in the upward ascent. The subliminal or the intraconscious contains behind the surface being of our outer nature of body, mind, life, a true mind, a true vital, and a true physical, subtle physical. These are in contact with their corresponding universal planes of existence, and they have direct contact with what is to be known, subtle senses. The human consciousness can enter into the subliminal in sleep or in samadhi, which is an inward drawn condition, or even in the waking consciousness. So, samadhi is also possible in the waking consciousness. So, there is a difference between the samadhi of waking consciousness and the samadhi of sleeping consciousness. In the sleeping consciousness, you lose contact with the physical world, but in the waking consciousness, you don't lose contact with the physical world, but your consciousness is available even in the intraconscious. So this is what he is saying. Okay. So it has taken a one paragraph, it has taken full time, but I found it very, very interesting the words he uses. Okay. Think about them. Okay. For instance, the documentation that he is saying, very interesting. The senses are gathering information and giving that to the mind, which is storing it as a document and interpreting the document to you. Okay. So, we can stop here today, but if there are any questions, we can deal with them. I hope it was clear. Okay. Every time you read Srirando, something becomes even more clear. The picture emerges, which is very, very clear. Okay. Soki, Yasmin, Archana Di, Shilpa.